Okay, hi everyone. My name's Bev Janish, and I'm here today with Dr. Angela Grace. And in today's discussion, we're going to be exploring the intersection between psychology, spirituality, and the matters of the soul. Angela is a registered psychologist who works with girls and women with trauma and soul centered issues. She's a writer, artist, and social justice advocate. She's won multiple awards for her work in education and psychology. I first learned of Angela and her work when I was looking for others locally who are also interested in the dark night of the soul and the spiritual journey, which is ultimately about awakening people to our authentic selves. And I was really inspired and intrigued by her depth of knowledge and how she was integrating psychology with spirituality. I loved her holistic approach and was really grateful that she agreed to be interviewed today to share her experience. So, Angela, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Bev. And thanks for
Yeah,
reaching out.
yeah,
It's always
I'm
really special.
I'm really excited for this interview. And I really just want to start off by asking you what has inspired you to look at psychology and your work from a soul-centered perspective?
Well, I'll tell you, it was honestly going through my own dark night of the soul.
Mm.
Is so I was going through my PhD and just things were not lining up for me. I started to feel edgy. I started to question things. I started to not feel good in my own skin. I was questioning my relationships. I just was like, what am I doing? And I remember the one day I was like, I developed all these physical symptoms. Like I couldn't sleep. I was just stressed. I was crying. And yet I was still so stubborn. I'm like, you've got to do this, like just push through it. And then I remember the one night I couldn't sleep. So I got up to make a cup of tea and it was a full moon. And I sat while the water was boiling. I stood at my window and I was looking out and there was the full moon. And I was like, can I just have my soul back? Like that was my question. Can I just have my soul back? And I started doing this motion and I was like pulling my soul from the moon. And then I started to feel better. And then I was able to go back to sleep. So the next morning I woke up and I did what every good psychologist does is I Googled it. I'm like, what is like soul pulling? What, because I felt like I was pulling my soul back. So I Googled it and I came across soul retrieval work by Sandra Ingerman, and then looked at her work in core shamanism and thought, what is this? Because I was living it, but I didn't know what it was. And so from there, I started to go down the path of core shamanism and understanding like this shamanic, earth-centered, soul-centered approach to living. Um, it didn't happen overnight. I'm still on the journey. It's been 11 years now, and I'm, still a baby at it. But it just started to make intuitive sense, and I felt better the more I was connected to the earth and animals and the cycles of the sun and the moon, just the more I personally started to feel better. And of course, as a psychologist, we've got the scientific, the regulated profession side where I'm like, am I turning into like some hippie weirdo flake that shouldn't be in this profession anymore?
Wow.
Totally judging myself. But then I thought, no, no, there's really something to it. And so I just started exploring more existential psychology, core shamanism. And then I came across this phrase, and I can't remember who said it, but the root of the word psychology is the psyche. And in Roman terminology, the psyche is the
The
soul.
soul. Yes.
And that's when I realized psychology is the study of the soul. And
Yes.
we've messed it up by
Okay.
making it all about the brain and
Okay.
behavior and cognition. and
Okay.
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where, I was trained traditional psychology, I was trained in CBT, but I realized you can't change your thinking and your behavior to change your emotions. It comes from the bottom up. So that's when I started looking at like neuropsychology and fight or flight, and then layering on that betrayals and damage to the soul. And that's where the crossover between psychology and spirituality started to make sense to me. Like, for example, with trauma in the world of scientific psychology and neuroscience in the brain and the nervous system, um, there's, fight or like we get hurt, we get into fight or flight, we dissociate. There's all of these symptoms that happen. And yet, in the world of core shamanism, it's actually soul loss, where
Mm.
something hurts you in the human and the physical realm, and part of your soul flies off to keep you whole and safe and perfect
Mm.
as we are. So, and it's interesting as I do this, I'm pointing to the picture that my friend Dr. Carly Fellner created about the birth cycle of how we're born from the stars and come into this human body. So that led down to a path of being interested and being invited to First Nation ceremonies.
Wow.
And just with a lot of humility and just learning the teachings. They're not mine to share. Right
Right.
now they're mine to take in, but like just
Wow.
starting to notice the synchronicities.
So tell me more. Tell us more about this birth process in the way that, I mean, you and I, we first got connected because both of us had experienced and gone through a dark night of the soul, and we're both left going,
Yeah,
what happened, what is happening to me, and what happened to me. This
yeah,
somehow we knew this was something that we couldn't really make sense of at the time. It's like we had to look back. And then you say about
mhm,
this painting of yours that is about giving birth, and I feel really like the dark night of the soul is about giving birth to our authentic self,
yeah,
to our deeper. And when you're pulling in your soul back, it's
yeah.
like I'm giving birth to my authentic self. So can you say more about why do we lose touch with our authentic self,
Yeah.
and why does that happen
Well,
from your experience?
yeah. So this is both like my personal experience and wisdom that comes in, and then conf- not really confirming it, but just checking with people who've gone before me, and checking with what some of the research is saying. So part of it is, so the First Nation teaching is that we're soul beings and we come from Pleiades, and our souls are born into this human body. So it's called coming earthside. And so we're born into the world to shine, to spread our light, to share our gifts. And yet we're born into this human families that have their own, non-awakening and their own trauma. And so we're born into these families. Like, I remember as a little girl, and I'm not blaming my mom. She has her own thing. But I remember just wanting to sing and dance. And so I was 6 years old. I was singing out loud in church, just singing along. And she leaned over to me and said, "Don't sing high." So probably in my little 6-year-old way, I wasn't matching the pitch. I didn't know. I was just singing. And she said, "Don't sing high." So here's me expressing my joy and told, "Don't do that." So what that does is it shuts off, it's like shutting off the light that says, "Oh, if I shine my light in this way, other people aren't going to like it." So they shut it down.
Mm.
And then we get, other experiences. So first we're born into families, and if they've got their own trauma, if they've got their own experiences, their own, rigid perspectives on how we should be as children. And I know as a step parent, I have some perspectives of the kids where I'm like, uh what are you doing there? That's not acceptable. And so I have to, check in with myself, like, okay,
Yeah.
can I let this go? But so we're born into these families. And if there's trauma, if there's abuse, if there's neglect, if there's victimization, and of course there is, we are all wounded as children in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. Either somebody does something physically, or says something, or ignores you, abandons you. We are all wounded as children. And so then it's our job as adults is to heal that wound. But we can't do the healing ourselves. We have to let ourselves be healed. But it's going through this reckoning of what hurt me, what hurt my soul, and then start reclaiming that. But it's more than like, I'm going to reclaim this. It's remembering. So like with that example I gave, so when I was 6, my voice was shut down and I was silenced with my singing. And yet in this new awakening that I realize I'm a singer, but my vocal cords have been shut down for over 40 years. So I'm working with a vocal coach to find my own, to release the tension, to release the trauma so that I can actually sing the way that I want to. Right. So that's where like the soul wants to shine and do these things. And we're shut down by other human egos. And then we go to these weird places called school, where you're a whole bunch of little beings shoved into the same room because you're in the same area, or your parents want you to have this experience. So you go to this school, and then all of a sudden you've got your teacher with their expectations, and all these students coming in with their fears and expectations. And it's just, oh, it's sore. My dog got scared and jumped off the couch.
Oh,
Aw, poor baby.
I know you have a little bit of work going on there, the
Yeah, we have some
pounding. So
construction going on.
and
So
in
there's a
case
little bit of
anybody
noise.
hears
Yeah.
that's just some
Yeah.
construction
It's just some construction outside, and I've got a
and you're
scared
trying,
dog in the corner.
yeah, and you're trying to just provide comfort to the dog at the same
Yeah,
time that you're chatting with us.
exactly.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Yeah.
so like, and then we live in these societies with these expectations. Like our North American society, the expectation that, girls and women should be thin, should be smart, but not too smart, should be independent, but not too independent. Like it's all of these things. And so we grow up just surviving. And then eventually we get to a place in our adult life um, where we have to make sense of it all. And
Wow.
so one of the things that was really reassuring to me was then reading about soul loss and reading about the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul is this space where nothing makes sense. You have to sit and face, where did all your beliefs come from about yourself, about the world, about how you are in the world, about who you are. And so it's this soul reckoning.
Soul reckoning.
And
Oh, I love
often,
that. Soul reckoning.
yeah, soul reckoning, and coming to peace with who you are. And the thing we also have to remember is when we're hurt as children, we're often shamed. So we have to face the shame and say, is that mine or is this theirs?
Wow.
So if we go
I
back
just
to, yeah,
I want to ask you more about this before I forget, because it's so amazing. I love this whole idea of soul reckoning, and you talk about soul loss, and I talk a lot about soul alignment, which is
yeah,
that living the outer in alignment with the inner, our soul, because when we don't, then it's like the soul reckoning
oh
is
yeah,
imminent. So tell
oh yeah.
us, what are some signs or what are some symptoms you talked about when you were feeling the soul loss and you're trying to retrieve it? You had physical symptoms, you had
Mhm.
emotional symptoms. Can you talk about the symptoms? Like, what are people meant to look for or maybe experiencing that are
Yeah,
indicating that the soul is there's a reckoning here?
yep. Well, I mean, so always, 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 when I first meet with people, I say, go get a physical, get your blood work done. We need to rule out anything physical that is going on. Okay. And the reason I give that example is, so I was working with this one gentleman, older gentleman. He was retired, and he's like, I just want to be happy, and I'm so miserable, and I have no energy for anything. And I don't like, I think I'm really depressed. And I said, okay, well, first things first, go get your physical. Well, it turned out he actually had Addison's disease, which is where your adrenal glands 100% quit working, like they're dead. And so there is nothing I could do in the world of psychology to remedy that. He needed medication and hormones and biological treatment. And of course, we need that support, right? So the example that happened to me was my soul reckoning, was facing my perfectionism and workaholism, which I took on to relieve anxiety. If something made me anxious, I researched it. If something made me not feel good, then I, became an expert in the area. So I'd research and do that and go into my brain, and I call it smart girl mode, which served me well. I mean, I got a PhD, so fine.
Yeah, that's pretty
But
good.
yeah, that's pretty good. But emotionally, I was really, really, really suffering. And so when we have to remember that emotional pain follows the same pathways as physical pain. So my emotional pain showed up in stomach aches. It showed up in headaches. It showed up in insomnia. It showed up in almost like ADHD, where I was just restless and I couldn't focus, and I didn't know where to look, and everything seemed super important. And then it showed up in crying. And I remember the one day when I knew I was in serious trouble. So I live in Brentwood, in Calgary, and there's Nose Hill Park. So this beautiful, great big park right near me. But I was driving, I was driving to get there to the parking lot. So I sat there at an intersection, and it's John Laurier, and there's traffic and traffic and then traffic and then traffic. Like I couldn't go. And I sat there and I just started to bawl. And I was like, all I want to do is walk in Nose Hill Park. Why is this stop? Like, why can't I do this? Like, I was stopped in traffic having a complete meltdown. And so the emotional meltdowns are a significant clue that you are not aligned and something is really hurting you. Yeah,
Really powerful. So you just
really.
really, really described the physical. I love how you bring
Yeah.
that up, because I have to say, in this whole idea of spiritual bypassing, and where we're using spiritual practices or rituals or things to kind of bypass some of the human stuff, and it's,
Yeah.
and the physiological causes as well as the
Yeah.
physiological effects of living in misalignment. So having that
Yeah.
perspective is so important.
Well, yeah. And that's when I went to my doctor and I said, something's wrong. Like, this is the life I want to live, happy, joyful, enthusiastic. I have no energy to get there. And she said, I think you're depressed. And I'm like, nope, I'm a psychologist. I know what depression looks like. And I said, this is actually deeper than depression. This is bone tired cellular exhaustion, and I can't get out of it. So she initially was going to give me an antidepressant. And I'm like, no, we need to do more tests. So that's when she did blood work, and she says, you have no hormones. She said, your hormones are far below average, like far below the norm. And I'm like, so what do we do? So she sent me to a functional medicine doctor who then did a whole bunch of other tests. And she said, Angela, you're in what's called stage 4 adrenal fatigue. Your adrenal glands have been so stressed for so long, they're shriveling up like raisins, and you're not producing hormones. So then she did some more tests and some genetic testing and discovered that my body has something called MTFHR. So it's a genetic mutation where my body doesn't detox very well. There's something missing. So she gave me some supplements to help detox. The other thing that happened that was so fascinating to me, I went to the dentist, and the dentist was like, you have an abscess. And I'm like, really? And he says, yeah, don't you feel it? And I'm like, well, no, because like my gums bleed every time I floss my teeth every day. So I just thought that was normal. So he sent me to a specialist, and they determined that I had an abscess tooth that needed to be pulled. And the specialist said, "This is the worst infection I've ever seen. It's probably been here 1 to 2 years." So I had a systemic infection that my body was trying to fight that wasn't diagnosed. So that is why we're connected, body, mind, spirit. We're all connected. So if there's something physical going on, always get physically checked out first. And then we can look at what other soul hurts are happening
Yeah,
for some soul
contr
retrieval.
yeah, that are contributing to the physical, like,
Yeah.
so fascinating. So first I've heard you share that story about how your misalignment or soul loss was showing up, because that's very similar to my own journey.
Mhm.
It showed up through physical manifestations of
Mhm.
stress, hormone imbalance, adrenals,
Yep.
emotional stuff. And I too, along the path, they're like, oh, well, maybe you need an antidepressant or you need this. And it's not that I you know, feel definitely there's a time for that, but I knew deeper down there, no, there's something not in alignment.
Yep.
Um, and so my soul misalignment was manifesting in
Mhm.
these, my soul was basically trying to get my attention. And
Yes.
and then,
Yes.
the soul reckoning is,
Yes.
okay, I need to deal with the physical
Yeah.
and then look deeper.
Yeah.
What is not in alignment that now my body is giving me these clues that are saying, you're not living your most authentic self.
Exactly.
Like that
Exactly.
part of you, like you say, we're needing to find your voice, that joyful girl
Yeah.
that had to stuff it.
Yep. Just
So how do you I just think I have goosebumps hearing how similar our
mhm.
journeys, even though different, but similar.
Mhm.
So how do you feel, you're such an expert at the intersection of spirituality and the soul and psychology.
Mhm.
How do you think those things support each other? How do you feel? Where's there room for improvement?
Yeah. Well, this is the interesting thing. So, of course, like I dove into the dark night of the soul. I dove into mystical experiences because I had a few experiences that I was like, whoa, I knew something was going to happen before it happened. And like, I'll just give the example of both my grandmother's deaths. I knew when they were going to happen. And so I helped my grandmother's pass. Um, I
Wow.
just knew.
Oh.
And so you learn to follow you learn to follow the voice of wisdom and
Mm.
intuition. So it's a combination. So I'm going to go back to when I was researching like Dark Night of the Soul. I randomly came across this very interesting 1967, so very old article by Dabrowski. And he was, I believe, a Polish psychologist. And he was writing about positive disintegration.
Mm.
And I was like, what is this? So his theory is that in adolescence, we go through, we go through puberty, like our body's changing outside of our control, and we just have to survive it and look after it and hopefully make it through in one piece. Like that's what adolescence is, turbulence. And he was saying for gifted, empathic people, there can be a second adolescence that he calls positive disintegration, where nothing in your life makes sense. So people can go through a divorce, they can go through a job loss, they can go through, a relationship breakup, they can, go through a death in the family or death of someone important to them, and all of a sudden their world gets shaken up. And he says that's the point where people can either negatively disintegrate into severe mental health issues, psychosis, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, suicide, or there can be a positive disintegration where you let everything fall apart so that the universe, God, can put you back together in an aligned way again. And I held on to that because everything in my life fell apart. Here was the other thing that happened. I was going to be a professor. I got my PhD. I was going to be a professor at a university. And I got the interview. And they were describing the interview to me, as a meeting with the dean and a meeting here and a 2-hour research presentation. And during that 15-minute phone call, I felt sick. Like I actually wanted to throw up. And I thought, I can't do this. Like it was just this crystal clear hammer over my head. You can't do this. And so I said to my dream job, thank you for the opportunity, but I'm going to decline. And then I hung up the phone and I sat there and I was like, what did I just do? But I knew with my whole being, I could not do that job. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to walk the road less traveled. And everybody around me was like, what are you doing? I'm all, I don't know. That's my answer to everything nowadays
God.
is they're like, what are you doing?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
I
I'm
don't
just doing
know.
the next
How
right
do I
thing.
know?
I don't know.
I'm just doing the, I have to just pause there and just really like, I can't tell you how many people in when I'm interviewing about dark night of the soul and the authentic self and the soul retrieval and the soul reckoning that talk about the courage, for one, courage to follow the road less traveled when logically in your head everything and everyone is saying, well, what's wrong with you? Like you are in line with being a professor at a university.
Yep.
And isn't that what everyone would want, and yet so that takes courage. So can you talk more about courage and the road less traveled and listening to the deeper part of yourself that isn't the intellect going, oh no, you're supposed to be grateful for this.
But honestly, I've been thinking a lot about this lately too. Why is it courageous to speak the truth? Like where does this idea of courage, like why is it courageous to be yourself when it should just be natural to be yourself? It's courageous because of the judgment of other people. And so when we let go of the judgment of other people, you can just be yourself. But it's still, like, I mean, clearly I'm human, so I still struggle with, wanting to be liked, wanting approval, but it's those false things that we need to let go of to have true authenticity. We have to have this layer of not caring, of the greatest gift you can give yourself is the gift of not caring what other people think. And you can insert stronger language there, not giving a fuck if you want to, because
I don't mind.
we have to get there. We have to get there. Otherwise, we're not going to be okay. And
so
you know what?
all of these years of psychology study, your own journey, your own soul retrieval, that is a very powerful message, is being willing to be yourself again, and let go of the need for approval, let go of the need to be liked, letting go, like the path. Because otherwise we're going to have symptoms.
Exactly. Well, and here's the other thing so here's the second part of that story. So I walked away from that, and now I teach one class a year, and I love it. It's totally aligned with who I am. It's teaching pre-service teachers how to teach health and well-being in schools. So it's like really aligned with who I am without all the meetings and other bureaucracy stuff. But here's the interesting thing that has come up from me stepping away from a university professorship and just following the path. And I firmly believe my path is just do the next right thing. I feel like, life is a winding road, and it's like God just he just puts like a little tea light, like everything's dark. So a dark night of the soul is like this. Everything's dark. You don't have a clue where you're going. And it's like God just plants a little tea light and lights it and says, go here. And just sit in the glow of that for a little while. And then when that's done, he'll light another one that says, go here. So that's what I've done like the last, well, especially the last 6 years since like it was 2015 when I graduated and then I got really sick. That's when I got really sick with adrenal fatigue. And so I've just been following the next little thing. And I noticed the niggling feeling when it's just like something isn't working for me anymore. So I go through the pain of letting that go. But here's what's happened is, so I'm sure you've heard of the challenges with our Alberta government right now.
Yeah.
Everybody has. But one of the areas is education, where this new curriculum has come out and there's this backlash against it. Well, what happened for me was I helped design the 2018 curriculum, just, as a community partner, a few hours here, a few hours there. I I heard this voice that just said, you need to look at this new curriculum from a psychology perspective. So I did, and I was appalled. And so I had a week off after Easter, and I was divinely inspired to spend all my time. So I spent 50 hours in 3 days reviewing this curriculum, writing a report, putting it out there, like sending it to the Minister of Education and my MLA and saying, hey, like this is not okay, and this is really scary for our children. And then from that is I got contacted by the deans of education saying, we saw your report. We really appreciate it. Would you be a steering committee member for this Alberta Curriculum Analysis website where we want all of this academic work? And I said, yes, of course. However, I'm not associated with the university. I'm in independent practice. So do you still want me? And they're like, you're the perfect person to do this because you are independent and you're not governed by a body that's going to say you can only say certain things. So I've become a social justice voice and advocate for the next 30 years of children and teachers in saying we cannot let this curriculum pass. So the interesting thing is, this is scary work. This is standing up to power. This is speaking truth to power. This is our government. But what's happening is I have the energy to do it because I know it's aligned with who I am, what I believe in, and it's also aligned with the deeper truth of providing the best education possible for our children. And then combined with the First Nations teachings that I've been gifted with this is healing 7 generations and also preparing for the next 7 generations.
Wow.
And so when you're in, I have no problem now standing up truth to power because the power is false. Their power is false. They don't get to dictate. And so I'm just going to keep standing the ground for all the people that can't speak for themselves right now, which is basically 25 years of children that aren't even born yet.
Wow. And this was all from following the tea lights.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And probably I would think, just because of us both having gone through this dark night of the soul, is really preparing us to follow the tea lights and develop new capacities beyond our rational left brain, which is a gift. We have it, but we need to develop our capacities to listen to a deeper wisdom. So we're developing our right brain, our intuition, our gut, what are the signs from the universe? How can we be receptacles and vessels to be open to the tea lights?
Yeah.
And then,
and so this is where the soul and traditional psychology come together. So for this curriculum stuff, it is useless for me to just stand up and bitch and say, this curriculum's terrible, throw it out. Like a lot of people are doing. There's no educated, that's just pure emotion. Oh, this is terrible, we can't teach this. And then people get on a bandwagon. Whereas I can actually say, using the cognitive PhD scientific
Yeah.
side. This is all the research,
Yeah.
the human research done that says we can't proceed with this. So everything I say is backed up by research and inspired by divine wisdom. It's the tea
Oh,
light. The tea light says, Angela, do this. So this is what I'm doing.
and you develop the capacities
Yeah.
through which, again, I believe going through that dark night of the soul is about developing the capacities to access your inner wisdom,
Mhm.
to build on your gifts of your cognitive, rational,
Mhm.
research mind. Now you bring the other piece to be of service in the world,
Exactly.
which I love
That's what
how
this is.
you're
It's
being
being
of
of service.
service in something bigger than yourself, and you're a vessel through
Mhm.
which you're using your gifts,
Yeah. I
and you're
mean,
being an advocate,
yeah.
making a difference.
Like, I don't
No-
even have kids to go through this
oh,
curriculum,
wow.
yet here I am knowing that this needs to be done. And also knowing collectively, it's not just me. There is a whole realm of super smart academics and insightful, intuitive parents and like teachers that are saying, no, we can't do this. And so we need a voice to do it.
You know what you just described so beautifully is also how I have this deep sense of belief, and from journeying with many people, that truly what a lot of this is about as well is creating our bodies, our personalities,
Mhm.
coming into right relationship with that in order for our higher purpose to be expressed through us,
Exactly.
and not in
Mhm.
service of our ego, but of course we'll
Yeah.
have a healthy ego that enables us to bring our gifts to the world,
Mhm.
um, but in service of something bigger than ourselves, because the esoteric teachings from the wisdom teachings around the soul
Mhm.
is when the soul awakens within us, the soul needs to be of service to
Yes.
something bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
So then all of the I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, but all of the psychological work we do, the healing work we do, the
Mhm.
bringing the adrenals back into alignment from the physical perspective is all in order to be that healthy vessel.
Oh yeah, like we're at this place because we went through the times. Well, this is my time of lying in bed, sobbing, wondering if I was ever going to get healthy, and binge watching Grey's Anatomy all day, like,
Yeah.
and phoning my girlfriend, sobbing. Like, you know what? There's a lot of crying in Dark Night of the Soul. There's a lot of crying, and there's a lot of rage
Yes.
and
And
rage
confusion
and
and
confusion.
fog and being lost, like
Yeah.
Dante says, in the dark woods. I
Yep.
mean, we're in the
And that's
dark
it.
woods with no path.
And
And
I was
what
literally, that literally happened to me. I went out to Kananaskis and I started walking on this path, and then I was crying, and then I kind of, veered off, and I literally was lost in the woods, not
wow.
knowing how I was going to find my way back. And then I'm like, well, I'm just going to walk this way and hopefully there's a road. So I was lost in the woods for a couple hours, like literally. And that's where I found myself. Like, go get lost.
Oh, you know, that
Go,
just that
go get
just
lost in the
provides,
woods.
and you literally that you were literally in the woods, but that is how it feels. So I just think that provides so much hope, in the sense of when people are in that place where they're lost and they're in the
Well,
fog or in the woods, or they're like feel somehow that they have to retrieve their soul,
yeah.
that they're not alone, that it's really hard,
Yeah.
but it's also very beautiful, and that there's hope. and
Yeah. Well, and what
and
gave me the capacity to care, like, so that day when I was lost in the woods, I was crying and I was upset, and I took sticks and I was like hitting trees because I was so angry. And then all of a sudden everything just drained from me. And I saw a patch of sun shining through the trees, and I could see all the spider webs, and it landed on this mossy spot in the trees. So I literally laid down there and had a nap. I let myself have a nap in the moss, not knowing where I was going to, like, knowing I was fully lost. And who knows if there was a cougar around or a bear, like, I don't know, but just rested. And then I was able to get up and say, okay, well, I kind of came from that direction, so I'm going to go that direction and hopefully I'll find a road, right? So
So
we
that
have to find those places of rest.
and surrender. You
Rest and
ultimately, like,
surrender.
I think that is grace arises
It's grace.
when the tea lights start showing up,
Even if they don't make
when we're
sense.
so lost and we've
Yeah.
surrendered to say, something bigger than me needs to give me the tea light, show me a tea light.
Yes. And that's what it is. It's surrendering to there is a bigger force than us. I was raised Christian, so it's God, but for a lot of people it's creator, it's the universe. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the name is. It's something
No.
bigger than us.
Yeah.
And it's when we deny that there's going to be issues.
And that's when you think
And that's where
there's going to
soul
be
loss comes
issues,
in.
physical
Yeah.
issues, psychological issues, all sorts of those issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And then it's connecting. It's connecting back to, I call it your animal body. Like there's beautiful poetry by Mary Oliver. And some of them just stand out. Like you don't have to be good. You don't have to walk 1,000 miles on your knees repenting. You just have to let the soft animal body, the soft animal of your body, love what it loves. So if you love fuzzy socks and green tea, then do that. If you love, a hard hike in the mountains, then do that. We have to have these practices that bring us back.
Wow. That is
Like
so
I
beautiful.
told you before we started, I realized, I've been so busy lately that my meditation practice went out the window. And so this morning I went up to Nose Hill Park and I made it through. I have another way through traffic now, so I'm never stuck at that intersection again.
Oh, good. That's a relief.
So made my way there. And then I just found the spot where I had something beautiful to look at with the fall trees changing color, and just sat and meditated. And the meditation is just, well, that's beautiful. And how can I bring that sense of beauty into my body? Okay, that's restful. How can I bring that rest into my body? How can I let my mind be, how can I let my mind be like the sky? Right? So it's connecting and remembering that our bodies are made up of the earth. We're made up of the stars. So we need to do all the nutritional, movement, physical things to look after our body. And we equally need to look after our soul.
Yeah.
And if shit's going on in your life that you're not okay with, you have to sit back and say, I'm not okay with this. This is not okay. And you know what, honestly, Bev, I think collectively, we are going through a societal dark night of the soul.
Yes.
Where
we are.
Where God
no
is,
question.
and I say God, shining a spotlight that says, you humans and your egos and your power, take a look at what you're doing. And this is the time for positive disintegration, because let's face it, Bev, things are disintegrating. Like people are divided and disintegrated all over. So are you going to disintegrate negatively with severe mental health and anger and bitterness and darkness? Or are you going to let it fall apart and come out in the light? And we got to notice where we're flipping back and forth. And, I am not, like, honestly, I am peace, love, and light, and a little go fuck yourself. And we've got to have both the compassion and the dispassion, and the I am, and the boundaries of I am not engaging in something that is going to tear me down.
Do you know, I hear through this esoteric philosophy as well that we are in a time of harmony through disconnect and discontent and so it's like this misalignment, this where we are in this dark night of the soul, is all in service of us coming back into right relationship with
Yes.
each other, with
Yes.
ourselves, with the earth,
Yep.
with our people around the world. Like
Yep.
it's about, this is our time to disintegrate into a higher level
And it
of,
has to disintegrate.
yes,
It has to disintegrate. We have to let it go.
yes,
Like even with the construction going on in my house right now, it's a mess, and it's loud, and it's noisy, and it's obnoxious, and it scares my dog, right? And we're really lucky that a breaker hasn't blown and we haven't lost connection. But the deconstruction is a mess. And that's what we're being called to do, is look at the mess of our lives personally and collectively, and let the stuff go that is not serving anybody anymore.
right.
And what happens is people get attached to their egos, and they get attached to what they think is right, and they like hold on to it with a tight, firm grip. I know I did that too. But when you start to let go, that's when you can commit to a better way of being.
And the tea lights will show up.
And the tea lights will
The tea
show
lights
up.
are going to show up. So,
or they might burn your house down. I don't know.
Right.
Some things need to be burned down.
Some things need to be, which the tea light will shed a light on that. What needs to be a bigger, what needs to go? What doesn't serve me any longer?
Well, I have this really like amazing group of girlfriends, and like we're all on the same wavelength with this, going through our own stuff. And we had this get together, and we were talking about like the burning of witches that happened way, way, way back when, which was actually the destruction of feminine knowing and feminine wisdom. And we've said, now it's time for the witches to do the burning. Like it literally is this flip over. Not that we're going to burn anything down. Like we're just,
no,
it's all metaphorical.
Right.
But there's truth in that metaphor.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the phoenix rising from the flames, right?
The phoenix.
But we need each other and support. And you know what I found so supportive? I go to drum circles. I go to First Nation drum circles, and I just soak in the teachings with gratitude and humility. And we are returning to a more collective, land-based sense of knowing. Mm-hmm. Like if you go for a walk in the city, I love seeing like the little tiny plants that poke up through the cement.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, this is life.
It's a sign. Well, that's life happening. Yeah.
And just one more story, because we probably need to wrap up soon.
Yeah.
But one night, again, like I still have insomnia. I still struggle with that. So one night I made my tea, and I was out sitting in my yard, and I heard a rustling on the side of my yard, and I looked over, and there was a kitty cat. So I'm like, oh, hi, kitty. And the kitty cat like started walking, and I'm like, that's a really big cat. Then I'm all, oh, that's a bobcat. Huh. Okay. Do I need to go in the house? Like, what do I need to do here? And I just sat there really still, and the bobcat stopped, and it looked at me, and I looked at it, and we had this little connection. And then it just kept going. And I thought, oh, that's the teaching, is nature always has her way. We've imposed on the bobcat's natural territory, and it's finding its way, through my yard. And so we need to return back to that land-based family sense of knowing, of just doing the next right thing. And I just think that's probably such a beautiful place for us to start to close our conversation, and do the next right thing and come back into alignment. And that is so beautiful. And what back to like my original story of myself as a 6-year-old girl being told not to sing, and now remembering that I am a singer, taking vocal lessons. And my vocal coach said to me last time, she's like, Angela, and this is going to be my mantra for the next, I don't know how long years.
Yeah.
Stop thinking, more breathing. Less thinking, more breathing. I'm like, okay, yep, there it is. We have to listen to those messages that we get.
There it is. Less thinking, more breathing.
More breathing. And I don't know if you get this, Bev, but if I get messages in threes over a course of a few days, then I absolutely know that's my next little candle. Yes. So it was a message about breathing in yoga. It was about message about breathing in a spiritual book I'm reading. And then my vocal teacher saying, less thinking, more breathing. I'm like, okay, well, that's it. All right, breathe.
Yes, and I write those things down. I have like a synchronicity or messages
yes.
journal.
Yes,
so that
too.
because sometimes I get into my head, but when I attract the patterns, I'm like, no, this is clearly a message.
Or you hear it in songs. Do you get it in songs?
Yes, songs, signs,
songs are angels talking to us, like
signs and angels and smells.
Whenever I see yellow butterflies, it's my grandma.
Oh,
like I just know, right?
You just know.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. We just know. Well, that's a beautiful place for us, I think, for us to wrap up. And I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience and your insights and your expertise. It was so fun talking with you. And I will leave a link to your website as well.
Okay, sure. Yep.
So people, because I know I was just on your website and you're going to, be blogging and doing all sorts of other things.
Well, and if people want to hear a divine rant about the curriculum, I've got a little not Facebook, I've got a YouTube video, and it was all divinely channeled. Like I literally woke up at 2:30 in the morning and it was like, you got to say this. So I frantically wrote everything down, and then boom, there's,
okay. So
and it's not me. It
came through you.
So it came through me.
So where is that?
I'll send you the link on,
and then
YouTube.
I will,
it's on YouTube.
And I'll also, okay. So I'll also,
like I said,
that.
There's the, peace, love, and light, and go fuck yourself. So
yes. Well, we need a balance. Right? We need a balance, or we are,
it's okay.
Angela, thank you so much. It was so great chatting with you, and thanks everyone for being here, and take good care.
Thanks.